I love this movie so much. I am I
Well,
like
this interview is off to a very good start.
well
Uh,
it's I have to say though, like I sort of I think I'm a little bit more cynical than like my husband is. My husband is very he's like the sweetest person ever, and he was so excited to watch the movie, and I just melted with this. This felt like I'm a huge romantic comedy person, so it felt weird, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but it was sort of just like finally something for us that feels really grand. Like Trick is one of my favorite movies. A lot
mhm.
of people sort of like a lot of people don't even know it. I showed it to a bunch of like
Trust me, I know Trick. I've seen that
it's
movie a lot. Are
I
they
showed
doing a sequel?
I think so. I think something happened. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think something happened because it was right around COVID hitting really hard. Because I
Oh, it's a shame.
remember I was at a gay film festival when I lived in Rochester, and Jim Fall came to talk there, and he did like a Q&A, and he announced that they were doing a sequel. I think that was in like 2018 when that
Oh, wow.
happened. So I think they're trying to
If
get
there
that
was
back.
going to be a sequel, you probably would have seen it by now.
Yeah. So who knows? I could be wrong. Um, I did kind of just want to ask you though, in a general sense, like I don't say like I even hesitate to call it a romantic comedy, but I mean like I guess I wanted to know like because it is romantic and it's comedic, whatever. I guess I wanted to know like if someone says to you romantic comedy, what are some of your favorite movies?
I mean, I well, I should start with the ones that I used as references for this one, which
Okay.
was Bringing a Baby.
Uh,
One of my all-time favorites.
yeah.
Uh, Sullivan's Travels, which is not a movie most people who
Hmm.
don't love movies know about, but it's such a great comedy, screwball comedy. I don't know if you call it a rom-com. I guess there's Veronica Lake in it, and Moonstruck. I mean, Moonstruck is the
Uh,
all-time one of the all-time greats. I do love When Harry Met Sally. Recently, I saw in my travels, I saw a film called Rye Lane, which came out last
oh
year.
yeah, yeah.
I loved.
It's a good movie.
I absolutely loved that movie. Yeah, those are, I mean, and honestly, anything by Richard Curtis, anything by
Mm,
Richard, either
uh,
directed or written.
like he did About Time, didn't he?
He did About Time, which is one of
Uh,
my favorite movies.
that's so underrated.
It's an underrated masterpiece. I also love uh I mean, For Weddings and a Funeral. I mean, I could go on and on, but
Yeah. Yeah,
just
I feel like sometimes I think we've gotten to a point where saying something that has romance and has comedic elements, I feel like some people view that as like a not a badge of dishonor, but I think I think movies that feature both of those heavily are a lot trickier to um hit out of the park like this does. Just it's so, and I just rewatched it last night. It's so beautifully paced. It feels like almost like it's an hour and 20 minutes with such amazing
thank you.
emotional beats.
Where were you
Yeah.
when I was wrangling with the studio over the runtime? Um, you know, I look, a lot of that is the book.
Mhm.
The book obviously is far longer than the movie ever could be, and I had to do quite a bit of condensing in order to get it even at 2 hours.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
knew that
there's a lot in the book. Yeah.
I could never, ever, ever get it a minute longer than 2 hours. So I had that sort of brick wall, uh, and I got it in right there at the edge. I think that look, I think that comedy is such a funny thing in that people seem to think they know what it is, and then they have, Oh, it makes me laugh. Well, it must be a comedy. And there are some funny dramas out there,
Oh yeah.
and there are some very, very heart tugging comedies. I mean, About Time. I cry
Mhm.
every time I watch that movie.
Yeah.
Uh and and so I think that in in terms of the pacing of it, in terms I knew that it both had to have something approaching a rom-com kind of sort of a pace to it. But it's set in the White House and at Buckingham and Kensington Palaces, and there's this gorgeous scene in the book at the V&A in the middle of the night where they dance, and I
Mhm.
was like, this is I actually I started calling this a love story, and I really was working. I worked overtime in pre-production and in post-production to like rid people of rid people's minds of the notion that we were making a rom-com. We're not making a rom-com, we're making a love story.
Mhm.
And if you think about the movie as a love story instead of a rom-com, it also works,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that people think it works as a rom-com because, that wasn't we weren't allergic to that. But I also
Mhm.
just sort of felt like we need to be honest with ourselves about what movie we're making here. It isn't When Harry Met Sally, and
Yeah.
um it isn't Moonstruck.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the longing and the feeling of feeling alone and maybe people not understanding you and finding that in somebody else who can really connect with that. I mean, I think that is the weightiest and most meaningful thing, at least to me when I watch it. I mean, the fact that it's sort of like this ideal of um these two people who can find each other and connect on that level. I think that is very heart-rendering, not to be cheesy, but heart-rendering, I
Well,
guess.
I don't think a traditional rom-com could have a sex scene like the one we have. I mean, I remember like somebody in the process of making a film did say to me, like, well, they don't, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan don't have a big sex scene in Sleepless in Seattle.
Hmm.
Uh, and I was like, well, they would if they looked like Nick and Taylor.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh goodness.
but I again, I think that the idea of a rom-com goes only so far
I
for
agree.
explaining.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have to say, sort of on that note, thing that I want to, I guess, personally thank you for is there was the editing, just in terms of the edit that makes me like giggle af is when it cuts to the Washington Monument. After
Can I tell you something? That's
please.
such an accident. That was so
Really?
unintentional. No,
So,
because the funny
sorry, I
thing,
don't want to know it.
no, 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 it's hilarious because we had a more intentional joke, which
Mm-hmm.
was uh back in the day, and I know I'm asking for trouble because people are gonna like, oh, let's see the extended scene. Not gonna happen. But the polo sequence used to be a lot longer. There was
Mm-hmm.
dialogue. It was, careful sleuths can see like in the curtain call, you see a shot of Ellie Bamber in a dress that we never see her in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things like that. Uh, yeah, and then it was sort of a late thing in the editing process where I had a changeover of editors because when my first editor was starting a new job, and my second editor, not Nick Gautzing, came in and was I said, can you help me fix this scene? It's bumming me out and I don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he cut together a version of what became the polo sequence. But originally the scene in the tack room between the two of them when they're going at it had dialogue and it was a little longer. And
Mm-hmm.
we cut from Taylor pulling Nick's trousers down to a shot of a bottle of champagne popping open. Uh,
That's funny.
that was intentional.
Okay.
With the Washington Monument, I swear to God, we tried so many different ways to cut out of that scene, and we couldn't do it. And I was just like, well, let's just find some really good like stock footage of
Sure.
DC at and let's just go to DC at night and then we'll come back in. And we looked at a bunch of different ones, and that one looked the prettiest. And
Pretty
this
sure.
is
Yeah.
late in post-production, so we were getting all punch drunk. And
Punch.
it wasn't until we did a screening, like I think we might have done like I don't know if it was a fan screening or if it was actually like a test screening, but that cut got a laugh. And I was like, it's the champagne cork. We've done it. We just didn't realize we were doing it.
That's great. Oh my God. Okay. I have to say about the I was reading the book. I was about halfway through when I got a screener for the film, and I was like, I can't finish. I wanted to read it fully before I watched it. And then
You had the screener just burning a hole in your
I
inbox,
know
right?
it was just like Joey, Joey, just calling at me the whole time. And so I watched it and then I finished the book afterwards. And I gotta say, I love how this thing is adapted. Like I think it's a really great example of I mean, because it's not a short book. It's
No, it's not.
she hefty. She's a hefty book. And she there's a lot in there, but I think the adaptation is so precise in terms of like zeroing in on their story that I just wanted to say how much I admire what you did with it. That's not a question. That's just me
Oh,
telling
well,
you
but
that I
thank
like
you.
sure.
You know, I wish, there were people who were like, oh, it should have been a limited series. And it was already a movie by the time I came on board to work on
Oh
the
yeah.
film. I knew that this actually, they made the right decision. It always wanted to be a movie, but, you know, there's just so much that you can't fit in. And so it became early on, once I started writing the film, I was like, it has to be Alex and Henry. Alex and Henry have to be in every scene of the film. If it's not, if the scene does not contain them, it doesn't go in the movie.
Yeah.
There's only one exception to the rule. There's a tiny little scene between Uma and Sarah Shahi,
Mhm.
like less than 15 seconds. And literally, that's the only scene in the entire film that doesn't have either Nick or Taylor in it. And so, actually, when I set that goal for the film, then the adaptation, it wasn't easy, but it was straightforward. Like
Yeah.
it, it was a yes or no question. Is Alex or Henry in this scene? Nope. Then it ain't going in the film.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that helps with the us staying I don't know, it helps with like our excitement for this story to keep going.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
felt that excitement. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a blessing and a curse, right? It was like it was wind at our backs for sure. Uh, it was like everyone's excited. Everyone who knows this book is really excited for the movie.
Hmm.
And then it was also a high wire act without a net because
Mm.
like there are a million ways to screw it up, but there's only a handful of ways to get it right.
Right.
And so I was fully aware. I was fully aware that, chance was not on my side.
No pressure. No pressure at all. Not
No,
at
no,
all.
no,
Not
no.
at all. Um, I did want to ask about I would say a transition, but I love the scene so much when Zara finds out. That's one of the most quotable scenes in the whole thing. I think my actual favorite line delivery is a lot of people say it's probably Your Royal Highness at the very end, but I think my favorite is how she punctuates the word sir when she says, I'm not talking to you, sir.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that is great. But I love how literally the next scene is um Alex coming out to his mom, and I feel like that's sort of a one to the other is a really great example of how this movie is kind of allowing us to have everything.
Mm.
And I guess I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the transition of going from something that is so funny to something that is so heartfelt. And I do need a shirt that has Uma Thurman's face on it talking about Truvada. That's all.
Uh, I mean, Mike, look, my experience as a playwright has taught me that if you can make an audience laugh, you you gain the ability to make them listen. Uh,
Mhm.
and the other thing that I've learned is that comedy, if you can make an audience laugh, you will gain the audience's trust because comedy, by its definition, has to be true.
Mhm.
Nothing that is a lie can never be funny. Something that is untrue can never be funny. Comedy humor is true. And so whether an audience realizes it or not, if you can make an audience laugh, the audience trusts you. And if they trust you, they're going to be willing to go to places that are maybe less fun or less bubbly or enjoyable.
Mhm.
So I knew from my experience as a playwright that I could give them a riotously funny scene, courtesy of Sarah Shahi and the boys.
Mhm.
And That's the band I want to see,
Yeah.
Sarah Shahi and the boys. Um, then I could go from that into a more heartfelt scene, and I will have probably sort of loosened up the audience a bit to allow them to accept. Because sometimes audiences they can get uptight if they can sense. Oh, if they sense drama coming, if they sense like
Yeah.
oh oh God, I hope I don't learn a lesson from this scene. They'll tighten up and
Yeah.
they will refuse the gift. And so you have to like do a little tenderizing of the audience. And so I think that one of the reasons in the long run that scene plays as well as it does, not just because it plays well as a scene, is it does invaluable service to preparing the audience um, for the scene between Uma and Taylor. And when we were doing test screenings, those two scenes right next to each other always scored on some of the highest scenes
Mhm.
in the test screenings we did.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, there's something about like that comedic moment is so genuine, and like there's it's played in such an honest way that like an audience can tell if someone is trying to shove something at you and they
Mhm.
automatically become resistant to it.
Yeah,
But that I think is really just it's another example of how it gives us permission to like fall in love further with the characters
yeah.
and sort of the arc of what's
Well,
gonna happen.
and the two of them just, I mean, knocked it out of the park. I mean, I knew on the day that it was going to be a great scene. Like
Yeah.
I had written it to the best of my abilities, and then I handed it over to Uma and Taylor, and from the moment we started filming the scene, I knew that it was going to be great because the two of them were just playing so well together. They really, Uma and Taylor really love each other, and they had so much fun doing it. And then
Hmm.
it felt very safe for both of them. They made each other feel very safe, and to get as vulnerable as both of them get in that scene.
Yeah. I have to say the fact that I love Uma Thurman so much. She's
I do too. Well, I'm with you on that. I was so nervous the first day she showed up on set. I had been filming for about mm, maybe 5 weeks, so I certainly knew what I was doing by that at that point.
yeah.
I was at that point not an unpracticed filmmaker, but it's Uma Thurman,
Uma Thurman.
and at her first day of filming was the scene, the White House party with the British Prime Minister.
Hmm.
And that also happened to be the day my parents were visiting the set.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, and it really was like it was the worst timed thing, but there it is. And I remember both Uma and I kind of being a little tight around each other, like, who are you? I mean, obviously we had met on Zoom, we had
Sure.
a lot of time working together, and I had actually sat down with her for a bit before a few days after she got to London and did some work with her. But there we are on set, and it was a simple thing of just them walking in and taking pictures and all that stuff. And then I did the next shot with Uma was really setting up the scene between Alex and Henry as hey, we're meet me at midnight at my in my room. The shot starts with Uma and Sharon leaving the shot and going out, and then it
Hmm.
becomes this tracking shot for the boys. And I guess for some reason I did it that first before shooting. I don't know, but she watched me. Oh no, 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 no. I'm telling you wrong. we did her coverage first, did Sharon's coverage, then we turned the camera around, we shot the boys. And so Uma had a chance to watch me working with the boys, and I could tell out of the corner of my eye, Uma was watching me. And I knew well enough to know she's not just passively watching me, she's studying me. She wants to know who the hell I am. And so I remember putting on a bit of a show for her, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, Uma's watching me. So I was like being really, really just sort
Yeah.
of like very collaborative with the boys, and I'm just like, and meanwhile, I'm like, I feel like I'm still auditioning for Uma. But what I will say is, after that first day with her, I knew that I had gained her trust. And to gain Uma Thurman's trust as a filmmaker, to have that great, iconic actor let you um, in and give you permission to challenge them
Mhm.
and play with them and make stuff with them. It was such a thrill, and it was honestly the greatest compliment I have ever been paid by an actor, was just to be
Yeah.
trusted by Uma Thurman, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you got like this cast is insane. If I thought about it yesterday, I was like, actually, I don't know why it didn't pop into my like Uma Thurman, Stephen Fry. I will say the first time I watched it, I did not know Stephen Fry was in it, and I, in a room full of other homosexuals, just screamed out Stephen Fry, and there were some younger people that didn't know who Stephen Fry was, and I tried to educate them as best of my ability,
Well, they
and
know now, don't
they
they?
know now. I was like go watch a lot of his other stuff, just um, because that man, I can listen to that man, read a Campbell soup ad, print and
That was a
everything.
fun day to have Steven on set. That
Yeah,
was that was really, you saw all it was just Steven and the younger cast, and they were all they were all on their best behavior. And I was like, why can't you act like that when Stephen Fry's not on set?
yeah,
And then then they're children on the playground again. But we had it was so great to have him, and uh a real thrill to be able to direct him, and the loveliest man. He is a big E.M. Forster fan like I am, and so
hmm
we, on the lunch break, we just sort of sat in a corner and talked about E.M. Forster together until I had to force him to go back to work. But yeah, he's great. I mean, I love watching Stephen Fry play a homophobe. That's just so much
yeah, yeah. I mean, that could be your next movie, just a whole movie about directing Stephen Fry. I would watch that. I would very much watch that. I guess just a couple of things I wanted to just tell you that I appreciated, if that's okay. Um,
fun.
that museum scene, I loved. Um, I love that every statue, I mean, it was really about form and silhouette and affection. I was like pausing the TV last night, like going through, like looking at everything. I thought that's a really beautifully, um,
That
that's a beautifully gently directed scene. I love that scene so much.
that's also, I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to Stephen Goldblatt, my cinematographer,
Hmm.
who made that scene look the way it did. I went in with a very clear sense of what I wanted.
Hmm.
Stephen had the very challenging sort of uh, sort of barrier to creation, in that the museum wasn't going to allow him to bring any lights in. And
Yeah.
so a cinematographer without his gaffer is, sort of, a diver without his oxygen tank. And
Hmm.
he and his gaffer, they figured out how to use the existing light of the museum. All the lights obviously are directional lights, and they're pointed at the statues. And so Stephen was like, we were starting talking, he goes, I can light the hell out of the statues using the existing light there,
Hmm.
and then the boys will be in shadow.
Mm.
And I was like, that's perfect. And
Yeah.
so it really was. We watched several scenes from The Great Beauty, which was one of the visual
Hmm.
sort of influences for us on that scene. And yeah, it just became a dance with the camera and the statues, and the boys actually sort of, for a time, they kind of vanish in the shadows,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what I wanted. So this sort of limitation that the museum put on us actually created this wonderful scene that it was very aligned with what we wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Matthew. I have to say that rewatching it, I rewatched part of it like 2 days ago, and then I finished it again yesterday. That it was there's a lot of I don't know, the whole thing about idealism versus realism. I think that's very interesting, especially as we hurtle towards November. That's a really interesting thing to think about. It's just I just as a giant super gay nerd, I don't know, I love this movie so much. Like unabashedly so much. Like when the I saw the video of you folks announcing the sequel and everybody screaming, I was just like, I can't imagine what it would have been like in that room because I was
It was insane. It was so much fun. I mean, we were so excited to announce it. I mean, that obviously it had been planned for quite a while. I don't know how we kept a lid on it for as long as we did. And
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
a feat within itself. Yeah.
everybody guessed, but you know, until certain benchmarks are met in terms of, agreement to participate, you
Hmm.
announcing a sequel is not really smart. So I was really Amazon really did it so smartly. They did that fan screening. They got like 500 of the biggest fans of the movie in a room together to show them the film, many for the first time on a big screen,
Yeah.
and then we got to announce the sequel for them. So it was really, really fun to do that. It felt, it was like, I know that the film has brought so many people pleasure, and that makes me so happy, but I'm not there when they watch it, right? I don't
Right.
experience it. Uh, but to be in that room with these fans and to tell them what they were dying for us to say, and to hear the excitement in that room was just that to bring that much joy to a group of people who like are there to give us some love, was really just so thrilling. I mean, you could just see on our faces on the video, we were all just having
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah, that thunderous joy. The video that I saw, it was sort of like it was so loud that you couldn't even hear some things anymore, which I was like,
No,
that's
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
it. I love
yeah.
that. That's amazing. Um, well, thank you so much for your time. I just love the movie so much. I love The Inheritance. I read it within the last year. I'm dying to see that on a stage. So I'm very patient with finding a theater maybe near me that'll do it. But
Where
it's
are you?
I'm in the good old Midwest. I'm in I always say the flat conservative state of Ohio.
Oh, Ohio.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ohio.
I don't know of any. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't happened in Chicago yet,
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll get there eventually.
yeah. Give it time. Well, thank you again. Thanks for letting me embarrassingly gush at you. And
No, it's a wonderful way to spend my afternoon.
well, good. Yeah, if you ever need to pick me up, just let me know. Just ping me,
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Uh, have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Bye.